Hello, welcome to No Cold War Perspectives, which is brought to you in association with People's Dispatch. My name is Vijay Prashad. I'm the director of Tricontinental and a member of No Cold War. Recently, Dae-Han Song and I wrote a piece together called The US Makes Most Compelling Case for Nuclear Proliferation, which you can read at the People's Dispatch site. Dae-Han is part of the International Strategy Center in Seoul, South Korea, also in the No Cold War Collective, and an associate of the Korea Policy Institute. Look, it's very clear 80 years after atom bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki that everybody, every rational person would want to get rid of nuclear bombs. That is very clear. We are completely opposed to nuclear weapons. In fact, we are opposed to war in general. As a general policy, we would prefer any other means to war, peace over war any day. That, of course, includes nuclear weapons. On the other hand, the illegal Israeli and US attack on Iran has made a lot of countries consider the question of nuclear weapons as a shield. And really, that's what we mean by saying the US makes a compelling case for nuclear proliferation, the attack on Iran, more proliferation than non-proliferation. Dae-Han, you've been giving a lot of thought to this. What are some of your immediate thoughts and concerns about the question of proliferation in our time?
Sure. I don't think nobody wants proliferation. Like we're living in a time where we're meeting like climate change, like existential crisis of climate change, right? Like it doesn't like war is a massive greenhouse producer. It's just, there is no sustainable war, right? It's at a time when we should be focusing on peace, on resolving these like existential crises like climate change, global warming, whatnot. We're like moving towards the precipice of war, right? But I think one interesting point is that oftentimes a lot of people, especially the mainstream media, paints a lot of small countries that are pursuing nuclear weapons as just being like obsessed with the bomb, right? For no reason whatsoever, as opposed to really understanding it as a rational choice, right? As a rational choice, as a nuclear deterrent that in effect is effective, right? So we I guess the point is like we want a world with peace, but that has to start with like creating the conditions for peace, right? There has to start with not having a powerful country like the United States, just like attacking other countries. Uh, yeah. So I would say, to some regards, there is a rationale like a reasoning behind nuclear proliferation among these smaller states that is not just an obsession, that is not just irrational. And we don't want nuclear proliferation, but to do so, I think the conditions for peace have to be created.
The conditions for peace. And when you look at the case studies, people look at Libya, which announced in 2003, we're going to give up our nuclear weapons. 2011, the state was attacked by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and Libya now stands as a destroyed country. 3 years after Libya made that announcement, we write in our article that North Korea tested a nuclear weapon, 2006, the only country to do so in the 21st century. Nobody has been able to attack North Korea despite enormous buildup and pressure. These are two interesting pathways, the North Korea pathway, the Libya pathway. I mean, sadly, this is what small countries are looking at. They are looking at these two choices. They are making a determination.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because North Korea would cite Libya, right? They will cite Iraq, right? They would say, hey, Iraq got bombed because it didn't have any weapons of mass destruction, right? That's like the North Korean perspective, right? And I think it's interesting because if you actually take the time to look at the history of the negotiations between the United States and North Korea, it's clear that there were all these hinge points in which peace could have been made and the nuclear program could have been stopped. But in each instance, the United States reneged on its promises and backtracked, or an administration changed and decided to take a hardline stance, and in effect pushed North Korea from a diplomatic track to a nuclear track, right? To some degree, North Korea was able to use a two-track policy approach in order to not get left in the hook, right? Instead of like the United States just saying, yeah, we're pursuing diplomacy, so just denuclearize. North Korea was like, no, we're not going to do it until we actually have, well, complete security guarantee from the United States, which the United States never gave, and basically pushed North Korea to nuclear development. And I think what's interesting to point out is that nuclear development doesn't just stop with the bomb, right? Now you go into the vehicles to deliver the bomb, and then there's a whole process. So it's like, if you want to stop that process, just because North Korea has nuclear bombs, it doesn't mean that there's no more further development. There's constantly further development. So if like the United States wants to stop that, then there has to be like, you have to feel security. You have to feel that you're not going to get attacked.
Well, every country wants peace and development. They want security. They don't want what the West is imposing, which is war and austerity. It's out of the question. 80th anniversary of the atom bombs being dropped on Japan. We really, honor the memory of people who were killed in that terrible, terrible assault on these civilian cities. Our article is called "The U.S. Makes Most Compelling Case for Nuclear Proliferation." Dae-Han and I both work with No Cold War. This is No Cold War Perspectives, done in association with People's Dispatch. Thanks a lot.